Okay, so I actually have a video already made where I go through all the answers on this chapter 2 on the chapter 2 checkpoints, but this is going to be more geared towards your quiz, so I'm going to go fairly quickly saying what we need to know. We do need to make sure that we know the chemical properties of water that make life possible, um, such as the fact that it is an essential reactant to many of our processes in our body, our reactions in our body. It's also an excellent solvent, and it has a high heat capacity, which means that it takes a lot of energy to increase the temperature of water, and also it's slower to lose energy. So that means if different temperatures are occurring in our body, the water's more resistant than other chemicals might be. Why does water resist changes in temperature? Basically, why does it have this high heat capacity? And although we didn't talk too much about intermolecular forces or anything like that, it's because of these things called hydrogen bonds, which are strong intermolecular forces, which means forces between molecules. So it holds the molecules together, and it takes a lot of energy to disrupt those hydrogen bonds. All right. Number 3, define pH. And so we should know that pH is basically a scale that tells us the concentration of hydrogen ions and it's actually an inverted scale or reciprocal scale. So the higher the number for the hydrogen ion concentration, the lower the pH. So it goes the opposite way. And of course, if we have 7 on the scale is neutral, it goes 0 to 14. Less than 7 is going to be an acid. Higher than 7 is going to be a base. As we go towards 14, we get stronger base. As we go towards 0, we get stronger acid. Extreme changes in pH in the body can be dangerous, of course. We don't want bonds broken. We don't want complex molecules to be messed with that can actually change their shape so that they can no longer function properly. So complex molecules such as enzymes, for example. So enzymes can be disrupted by high temperatures that can change their shape and they no longer work, and also extreme changes in pH can mess that up. So from all that stuff, then we go into the different biomolecule groups. So we have our carbs, we have lipids, we have proteins. So 2,9, if we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio, this is going to be a carbohydrate. Their functions, I think I just said think of it as quick energy source. Okay. And when 2 monosaccharides, we think of these kind of as the basic building blocks of carbohydrates. And if you remember synthesis being to build, to create. So when we combine 2 monosaccharides, we're going to get a disaccharide. All right. And, really we only have monosaccharides, which are the just single sugar. 2 sugars is a disaccharide. Anything more than 1 sugar stuck together, we call a polysaccharide. We could get a really long chain that is like animal energy storage, long-term energy storage, which should be glycogen, but that's many monosaccharides. That's not Just 2, so not that. All right. So lipids are also going to be C, H, and O, but not 1 to 2 to 1. This is going to be, just think of longer term energy storage. And we can also think of protection and insulation. All right, don't worry about number 8. Do worry about number 9, though. Human cell membranes, that's where we find the phospholipids. We actually call the human cell membrane a phospholipid bilayer. Describing a protein, C, H, and O are also found in proteins. All right, but we also find here, we find nitrogen as well. If we go through the different biomolecules, we kind of end up being spelling chomp, which kind of sounds like chomp. But so this is sugars if it's a 1 to 2 to 1. This is lipids if it's not 1 to 2 to 1. And this would be proteins here. This would be the nucleic acids, next group. Their basic building blocks are amino acids. In terms of function, I said all except the other 3 groups. So if you look at the other 3 groups, what they do, and I'm asking you a function that doesn't fit into one of those categories, then we're talking about proteins because they do way too much to list here. If you boil a protein, hang on. I don't ask that one, never mind. All right. If you're curious, you can look back at the other checkpoint video. Nucleic acids, so like I said, they have C, H, O, N, and P. Their basic building blocks are nucleotides. They're good for storing information and for making proteins, protein synthesis. All right. And so basically, we have 2 types. We have for involved with the genetic information is DNA and protein synthesis is RNA. And so if the only difference between these 2 is the sugar, and this one is ribose, which is why we have ribonucleic acid. So the answer to number 13 is RNA. So we should know those as well. All right, ATP, high energy compound. We need it for producing energy in our body. So know that. And 15, so basically what we're talking about here is how is the energy actually produced in our body. And so what happens is we have ATP, which means we have adenosine, and then that's bonded to 3 phosphate groups. But this is a high energy bond. So if we break that, we get a lot of energy produced. And that's what this is talking about here. So what we get is adenosine triphosphate is going to be broken down into adenosine diphosphate. And then that other phosphate group will be separate. So remember that little equation there. So that's what it looks like. And that's all for chapter 2. Now I am going to include a couple questions about 3.9 and cancer. So for that, I'll go over to the notes. And so when we talked about cancer, you should know what a tumor is. So know that. Mass or swelling due to abnormal cell division and growth. You should also know that the migration of cells, that's dangerous. That's when we get malignant. So we've got benign tumors to stay in one place, but malignant tumors, you should know this term here, metastasis. And by the way, chapter 3, the 3.9 stuff is going to be fill-in, whereas all the chapter 2 stuff is multiple choice. But so this is when we get secondary tumors in distant tissues or organs, metastasis. All right, so write that down, memorize that. And then, of course, the whole idea here doing this is because we're talking about cancer. So you should know that cancer is an illness that results from mutations that disrupt the control mechanisms that regulate cell growth and division. Okay. So make sure you know what cancer is, and you'll be all set. So that is the new stuff for the quiz tomorrow, and you will also have an opportunity at the old learning targets. So good luck.